What's up, Philly faithful? I know that you guys have been waiting, for us to kick off tonight. So much to talk about. The Birds are 4-2 after they rolled into New York and rolled right over the New York Giants. Seems to me like a lot of people aren't all that thrilled about the win. We want to talk about the quarterback not being overly effective throwing the ball, 10 for 11, 114 yards, 1 passing touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns. And I guess my question to Philadelphia is, what is it that would make you guys happy? Does Jalen Hurts have to go out and have a 300-yard passing game, throw 4 touchdowns, not turn the ball over, rush for 50 yards and 2 other touchdowns? Let me just say this. This Eagles team is in somewhat of a transition period as far as I'm concerned. I just feel like things didn't start off the way that they really wanted things to start off to begin with. The offense wasn't clicking. They've been kind of confused as to what their identity is really going to be. Are they going to rely on Jalen to throw the ball 30, 35 times a game and, have the run game off of that? Or are they going to give the ball to Saquon and let Saquon set the table? Obviously, something's amiss. Something is off. I've been hearing a lot today that Jalen's missing a lot of throws, a lot of open receivers. Let me share something with you guys. For people who believe that, you have to have a clear understanding of, how offenses and how their pass progression actually works. And I agree. Sometimes I don't believe that Jalen really goes through his progression properly. I think sometimes he believes that his guy is going to win, especially if A.J. Brown is the primary. And he's going to wait on that guy to come open instead of looking at A.J. right now and saying he's not where he needs to be yet. He's not open yet. Let me move on to the next target in the progression. I agree. That happens probably way too often because there's not a player on the field that Jalen trusts more than he trusts A.J. Okay? But you also have to understand progression too. And that's going to be my whiteboard breakdown because I know the one play that everyone's been talking about is Saquon Barkley runs a wheel route to the offense's left. I think it's a 3rd down situation. And Jalen doesn't see him. And when I talk about progression, this is how you have to understand it. When you're sitting at home or I'm sitting at home and I'm watching a game, it's easy for me to make these judgments because, I'm seeing the game from a different perspective. But when you're looking at it from the perspective of the quarterback, if Saquon is wide open to the left and there's not a soul within 10 yards of him, but Jalen's progression starts to the right, please pray and tell me how he's supposed to have eyes in the back of his head so that he could see that Saquon is open to his left and he's looking to his right. That's the first thing, okay? The second thing is, to my point and to some of you guys' point, there was a play in 3rd down where Saquon was actually running a wheel route and he had Devontae Smith underneath. And Jalen was waiting on that route by Saquon to be open when he had Devontae right there in front of him. I agree. In a situation like that, his vision has to broaden. When I'm talking to young linebackers, I talk about the same thing. I talk about being able to broaden your vision, because if all you can see is the immediate, you're going to have a hard time playing. So quarterbacks need to figure out how to broaden their vision in the area that they're looking at. And when he misses Devontae on the under route, that kind of tells me that he's not grasping the offense in totality. Because as a quarterback, the thing that you have to do, if I take the snap and I set up in the pocket, I should be able to close my eyes and tell you where every receiver that's out in the route, exactly where he is, okay, and what depth he's at, and where he is on the field. As a quarterback, you just have to, because when Jalen starts to operate in that way, then he knows where his outlets are. And he's got to get better, and he's got to get faster at going through his progressions and his decision making, and not always waiting on the big play to open up, but being able to settle for the underneath stuff and wait for the running game to open things up for him, and the short to intermediate pass, wait for those defenders to start biting on the short to intermediate stuff in order for you to be able to get the deep stuff. And I'm not so sure that I believe that that's 100%, on Jalen. I think that that's a offensive philosophy of this team and this organization and this coaching staff. And to be honest with you, I don't think right now that the offensive line, particularly in the interior, are playing well enough for them to really push the ball down the field until they've established a run game. Now, Saquon Barkley, hell of a day. 17 runs, 176 yards, and a touchdown. Just put New York on notice with a massive mistake that they made. But at the end of the day, we're happy to have him. I've always said that a quarterback's best friend is solid offensive line play and a run game. And it seems to me that this is how the Eagles are going to have to, or how they need to operate in the immediate, until Jalen can begin to digest this offense in a way where when he closes his eyes in the pass route and he's got 3 out or 4 out, or maybe even 5 out, if he's an empty, that he knows where each and every one of these guys are. And that he begins to go through his progression in a way that if you got a 5-step or a 7-step drop, you may have a little more time. But if you got a 3-step drop, that ball has to come out of your hands right now. And when I say 3-step drop in a conventional way, if he's underneath center, it's 1, 2, 3 in his drop back, and then the ball is out. Well, if you're in the shotgun, the precept is still the same. I take the snap, 1, 2, 3, that ball is out. Whether it's a slant route, like he hit AJ on a couple of times last week, whether it's a stop route on the outside, whether it's a speed out basic by the tight end, or speed out basic by a slot receiver, because they're playing off of him. He's got to get to a place where he's confident and he knows where he needs to go with the football. And a lot of people are going to say, well, he's a franchise quarterback. They're paying him $51 million a year. He should already know that. That's easy for you to say. Because if I put you behind center and I told you to digest what was going on in front of you, you would be shocked at how fast things begin to happen. And this is probably, his third different type of offense, in as many years. I'm not making an excuse for him. I'm just being factual about what the circumstances are. When you've got a different voice that's speaking a different language to you year after year after year, that becomes difficult for a quarterback. You heard Troy Aikman and his comments about CeeDee Lamb and the Dallas Cowboys, how the wide receivers don't run really good routes. and how hard it is to actually play quarterback when you don't know where your wide receivers are going to be. Well, let me tell you something. There are times when Jalen Hurts drops back, and we can't see it because we have the TV view. But when you got the all 22 view and you're looking, at what's going on downfield, there are times where these guys aren't getting open. Even A.J. Brown in some situations. I know his Twitter handle is always open, but sometimes he ain't always open. And sometimes Jalen is holding on to the ball too long because ain't nobody open. He's trying to wait for somebody to adjust the route for him to have somewhere to throw it. The only way you're going to see that and the only way you're going to understand that is that when you're looking at the all 22, or every once in a while in the TV view, they'll give you a behind the quarterback scene where it's kind of open, where you can see everything that the quarterback is actually seeing. There were plenty of times in the game last week where guys just simply were not open. And sometimes route running can be a problem because you got to set your routes up. You can't just come off the line. Like, I've seen a couple of times guys got jammed up. Now, it takes a lot of nerve for a defensive back, especially in today's NFL, to get up and jam a guy at the line of scrimmage. You want to know why? Because you only get one jam. You can only beat that guy up one time in a 5-yard area before it becomes an illegal contact. But what guys don't realize versus press, if an offensive player is attacking you at the line of scrimmage, you have every right to use your hands and use your body to knock him off, to fight against him. You don't have to take the jam. You have every legal right to fight off the line of scrimmage. And when a cornerback is posturing like, I'm about to jam you up, man, then in your mind, you have to know that in order for me to get off this jam, in order for me to get off the line cleanly, I'm going to have to use my hands to knock his hands down when he goes to jam me. Or I'm going to have to put some body on him and put him in a situation where the referee may throw an illegal contact or holding penalty. But you just can't release off the line and think that these guys are going to give you free access all the time and let you go where it is that you want to go. Again, phenomenal day by Saquon. Hurts started off slow, a couple of 3-and-outs to get things going. And then I think, he threw the 41-yard pass to A.J. Brown for the touchdown, caught them in a man-to-man situation that was just a beautiful catch and throw. I mean, he couldn't have ran down there and placed the ball in A.J.'s hand any better than that. But, even with the day that Saquon's had, we're sitting here complaining about the offense. I told you guys that baby steps, that there may occur. We may have a situation where, Jalen may become a game manager for a short period of time. And I'd be damned if that's not what we saw, that they figured out early that he wasn't on, that something was off, and they decided to start handing the ball off to Saquon Barkley. And I would surmise, because, statistically, this never shows up. It shows up statistically that the Eagles ran the ball 45 times. But then when you stop and you really think about it, if Saquon Barkley only had 17 carries, who the hell had the other 38 carries? I mean, do we even consider stuff like that? Do we even consider stuff along those lines? Who had the rest of those carries? Because everybody's going to complain, well, we can't run the ball 45 times. Well, you got to consider when there's a tush push, that's counted as a run. Every time that Jalen scrambles and breaks the pocket, is no longer deemed a pass play. It's put over on the ledger as a run play because he ran. But in theory, the objective of the offensive play call was for Jalen to throw the football. But nobody got open. He had to take off and run. Now it converts to a run play. So those numbers sometimes can be somewhat skewed because the intent was to throw the ball down the field. The reality was it didn't work out, and Jalen had to run for his life and try to make something happen because the play broke down. And in a lot of situations, if you go back and you're honest with yourself in that game, the Eagles did not play well up front until they really started to run the football. In some passing situations, teams are getting pushed right up the middle. You got a backup right guard, a backup left tackle, and in a lot of situations, like Jalen was sacked 3 times in the first quarter. And everybody said, well, he's got to get the ball out of his hand. Well, Fred Johnson struggled early on until they really started to run the football, and then he began to get his feet under him. And now, when you establish the run, that puts you in a situation where your offensive line can be more productive because they're not kicking all the time, but they're attacking the line of scrimmage. They're wearing the defense down. And as the game goes on, it's going to become easier and easier for them to control the line of scrimmage. Listen, I know that. Most smart football people know that. But you can't force a square peg into a round hole like the Eagles staff continuously does from time to time. Use Saquon. I mean, even 17 runs, that's not a lot of touches, man. I mean, I get it. He ripped off a lot of long runs, and he was tired from time to time on the sideline. I get it, but 17 rushes, 17 runs, that's not a lot of runs if you really stop and think about it. So I just feel like, these are some issues that need to be addressed. You had 2/5 of your offensive line down. Your number 1 tight end was down. So you would kind of expect that things may be off a little bit. And they were for a while until they cranked Saquon up. And boy, once they got him cranked up, it was a whole different ball game. It was game, set, match. It was over. And I do believe that, if Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni can resolve themselves to, running the football and setting up their passing game off of the Saquon Barkley runs, that we very well may be in a situation where Jalen Hurts can get well very quickly. Start running some play action passes, some bootlegs, some misdirection plays. I'd love to see Saquon Barkley lined up in the pistol a lot more. That way, you're a lot less predictable as to where you're actually going to run the ball. Get Jalen under center a little more, which allows you, to, on your play action passes, now he can get a little more depth. When you line up at 4.5 yards in the shotgun and you take the snap, there's very little drop left that most quarterbacks do if you stop and you watch it. But when you're under center, you can fake one way and then continue your drop. And it's beyond a 5 or 7 step drop. You can actually turn it into an 8-9 yard drop. And then that opens up the field for him to see things, and it buys him a little more time, and it creates more of a pocket, even if he's getting pushed up the middle. But you think about it. If he lines up at 4.5 yards and he takes the snap, even if he takes 1 step back, he's now at 5 yards. But if he's getting pushed up the middle, where's the pocket? If he's getting pushed up the middle, where's he going to step? So there's some things that I would love to see them implement and do a little bit differently. But I think the way that Saquon has run the ball, they've got to take advantage of that and use that to their advantage in how they want to be able to throw the ball and how they want to attack offenses. Defensively, listen, I could not be thrilled by what I saw out of Vic Fangio. I hear a lot of people talking about, he wasn't blitzing that much. They just rushed the passer better. Listen, I've seen some 5-man lines. Saw some 4-man rushes, but you got Nakobe Dean coming on the blitz. They lined BG up once. They lined Nolan Smith up once. They lined Josh Sweat up once outside in coverage and brought a linebacker, even out of the 4-man front. So he's bringing a lot more pressure than what he was bringing, but he's also requiring that his corners get up and play more press coverage to challenge the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. And in my opinion, that mindset has lent itself to everybody playing more aggressively. Darius Slade tackled more aggressively this week. They missed less tackles this week. They were forcing the action across the board this week because, in my opinion, they were in a much more aggressive stance as to how they were trying to attack the Giants. The young guys keep getting better and better. Glad to see Sidney Brown back in the fold again. I think that he's going to create some pressure via competition on the back end, going to force Blankenship and in particular Gardner Johnson into playing a lot better because of his presence and what he brings to the table. In a limited role, he had a pass breakup the other day, coming off the hash nicely, knocking the ball down. It looked like it was a sure completion. And he brings versatility to the table as far as Vic Fangio being able to implement some 3 safety situations because of how he covers. I think he's a much better cover guy than Gardner Johnson. We know that Reed Blankenship, is the thunder, and he'll hit you, but he's somewhat of a liability when it comes to coverage. So you want to leave him in the center of the field and have enough versatility with these other safeties to drop them down in coverage situations, so that you have that advantage of a guy that can cover versus a guy that struggles. Also, in big people situation, we used to have a defense called overslide, over extra backer and overslide extra backer, where we would take a cornerback out of the game against these multiple big tight end sets and add a linebacker to the mix. And sometimes even add an extra lineman to the mix, depending on the personnel. Sidney Jones brings a whole lot of different options to the table and how you approach how you want to take things away from certain offenses. The guys, the defensive ends and the edge rushers, woke up and had a big day. And I know a lot of the people are saying, well, geez, it's the Giants, it's the Browns. Hey, listen, you play who you play. And however it is that you got to get well, you do what you got to do to get well. They got well with 4 sacks the week before, and then they turned around with 8 sacks against Daniel Jones. So I don't care how you feel about the competition, who they played. 12 sacks in 2 games is 12 sacks in 2 games. That's a step in a positive direction. And the most encouraging thing is that, you get Sweat, Nolan Smith, and Bryce Huff. Now that he's down in the 4-point stance, he's much more explosive out of the 4-point stance than he is standing up. But all 3 of those guys had sacks. Kobe Dean had 2 coming on blitzes. Probably his best statistical day, although I still would like to see him play better against the run. Phenomenal statistical day. 11 tackles, I think 8 solo and 2 sacks. And Jalen Carter continues to be a beast. He had 2 sacks and a lot of pressures, just very disruptive. The thing I like to see from him is, can he stack back-to-back games in this manner? Because this season he's had good games and then quiet games, and then good games and then quiet games. In order for him to elevate himself to the next level, the upper echelons of defensive tackles in this game, he's going to have to learn how to show up and show out every single week. Ajomo, Booker, Williams got a hell of a lot more plays in this game. And, you guys heard me talk about it in subsequent weeks, the meritocracy of being able to play, production over position. Jordan Davis has simply been not getting it done. He got 12 plays in this last game against the New York Giants. That speaks volumes for where they feel like he is at this point in time. But I love, what's going on with this defense. And just as long as they stay aggressive, I think they're going to get better and better and better. Well, listen, you guys are tuned in to the Seth Joyner Show. Please like, comment, share, and please, please, please hit that subscribe button. Turn on your notifications. I'm going to go to a quick break right here because my good friend Marcus Hayes is going to join us in the second half hour. And I do want to get to one or two of these whiteboard things before I bring him on board. But let's go to a quick break, and then when I come back, we'll do some whiteboard stuff. We'll bring Marcus on. It'll be really interesting because Brandon Graham kind of chirped at me yesterday, me and D Gunn, and I believe it was Marcus that actually wrote the article. So it'll be fun to have him come on and talk about that, but also to have him come on. I haven't talked to him about the whole Sirianni fiasco, as well as, this theory that players play for coaches. I don't really buy that, but we'll chat about that when we get back after the break. Hold on.
When you open the BetParks app, you're in the zone. Winning is always a rush, but the money is in the moments. It's the anticipation of another face card, the thrill of an extra spin, and the pure joy of a jackpot. It's all your favorite games at your fingertips. Plus, get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. You play for fun, you love to win. You bet. BetParks.
At Pond Lee Hockey, we're neither a pond nor a hockey team. In fact, I don't even know how to skate.
Cut.
We're the injury law firm that you want fighting for you.
With our vast network of attorneys across the country, we know the playbook on injury law.
It's how Pond Lee Hockey recovered billions of dollars for more than 100,000 injured and disabled workers.
And we know we can do the same for you.
So give Pond Lee Hockey a call. No other law firm will fight harder for you.
And you'll never pay a dime until we win.
You've got your Sunday obsession, and we got you. Now with Verizon, get NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube TV on us and get every out-of-market Sunday game. Plus $800 off Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 6. Only on Verizon.
See you Sunday.
Since 1893, Weber Display and Packaging has been Pennsylvania's leading manufacturer of corrugated packaging and displays. We're family-owned with 4 Philadelphia locations, 2 converting facilities, a warehouse, and a fulfillment center. Designed through delivery, we exceed customer needs. Weber Display and Packaging. Our core values drive everything we do. Come, join our team.
Welcome back, guys. We're going to jump right into our whiteboard session because I want to make sure that I give Marcus plenty of time for us to chat. So what I was talking to you guys earlier about was kind of understanding these route progressions and where Jalen's eyes actually are and what he's actually looking at, so that you can kind of understand, how when you're watching the game, he's missing some things. Okay, let me turn my phone off right quick. So this is the play, that we're talking about. So they snapped the ball to Jalen. Okay, now understand his progression on this play is from his right. Okay, so from his right to his left. Okay, so you get a shallow crosser here by the tight end. You got Devontae Smith on a crosser here. As soon as the ball is snapped, you got Saquon Barkley releasing on a wheel route, if you will. You got this tight end that pushes up the ball and sets down, and you got AJ on a go route. So his progression is 1, this tight end coming across 2, and this tight end sitting down 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, right to left. 1, 2, 3. So he takes the snap and he's looking in this direction. So the play that everybody's talking about, oh, he missed Saquon here. Well, please tell me if he's looking in this direction, if he's looking this way, how can he see what's going on over here on this side of the ball? Please tell me. Okay? It's an impossibility. So when you're sitting at home and you're watching the game and you think you understand and you see what's going on, I'm just sharing with you guys that you got to understand where his progression starts. Now, if his progression had started this side, okay, and he's progressing 1, 2, and then 3 to Devontae, then I would get it because he's looking here. But this safety, it comes over here and gets over top of Saquon right now. The fact that he's looking this way is what causes this safety to stay here, okay? And therein lies the problem. So people need to stop with this nonsense that, oh, he's not seeing the field. He's missing all these open wide receivers. Listen, there's quarterbacks every day in every way that's missing plays all across the board because their progression takes them either left to right or right to left. So I get it. I understand, how everybody's been out of shape sometimes about what he's missing. The truth of the matter is you're not going to be able to see everything. It's impossible to see everything, And to your point, one of the things that I don't like about how Jalen operates is that sometimes, like this is A.J. Brown right here. That's 11. That's Devontae, okay? Here's Saquon, okay? So at the end of the day, if this guy right here is the primary, he really trusts A.J. Brown and he really wants to get A.J. Brown the ball, okay? But if A.J. is covered, and I mean the minute that he gets the ball, 1,001, 1,002, if A.J. is covered right now, his eyes have to go, in my opinion, to the second read, okay? So the second read is this tight end dragging across here. That's number 2. If number 1 is taken away right now, 1,001, 1,002, that ball should have went to the tight end here, okay? And if number 2, if they're passing him off, then obviously he's got to go to number 3. And if the protection is really good, then this should have been the ball that everyone was talking about that he missed. That's where he should have actually went with the football, okay? The truth of the matter is the timing is like 1,001, 1,002. By 1,003, the defense is on you, okay? The ball should really be out. But when you're waiting for these down the field routes to develop and he's the primary, now you can understand why Jalen's holding on to the ball probably longer than he should be. Because that route takes a long time to develop. Now, if you really want to do that, then, at the end of the day, make it a 2 or 3 man route. Go a 7-man protection, blocking, keep him in blocking, and keep him in blocking, and release Saquon into the route. Now you got a 3-man route. 1, 2, 3. No problem with that. But if you think that AJ is going to get way down the field and Jalen's going to see him and he's covered and he's going to have time to come off on his number 2, a lot of what you're seeing, guys, is route design. And sometimes the route is designed in a greedy nature. And that greedy nature, in a lot of instances, is what gets, Jalen in trouble. Him waiting for things to open up, him waiting for, the big opportunity instead of taking what's right there in front of him. Okay. I think my guest is ready. Perfect timing. My man Marcus, how you doing, my friend?
Great. I was really enjoying what you were saying there. And it goes to the question, there's a third layer here, right? It's route design, Jalen's responsibility, and the timing of the route. So say that tight end is the second option. Maybe that tight end is supposed to stay in and chip for a second, 1,001, then release. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he's
right.
Because what I'm seeing a lot is, yeah, the tight end is open, but he has to stop in the middle of the field to remain open. And if it's man, of course, the guy's going to catch him. And if it's zone, they're going to focus on him. So he's really not open. So maybe, and again, this is something you probably know better than I do, but something neither of us can know for sure is that third layer happening properly too? Because when you mentioned Saquon staying in and then releasing, we see tight ends do that too. You know, Travis Kelce does that maybe, and George Kittle do that better than anybody I've seen. You know, Gronk used to do it a lot too.
Well, you know, really what I'd like to see is I think sometimes, you know, Jalen gets stuck on his guy. I talked about it in the previous half hour. The guys that we know he trusts the most is A.J. Brown and then Devontae Smith. He wants to get those guys the ball. But in traditional offenses, when you go through your progression in the proper way, if your primary is not open, then you have to go to your second and your third read right now. A lot of times the Eagles are running these routes so deep, so far up the field that it's almost impossible for him to come off. But this is where he's got to understand, in my opinion, his offense to the maximum. Okay, if I want AJ down the field and Devontae's crossing and both of them are covered, where's my outlet? Okay, where can I dump the ball off? Where's Saquon or where's the tight end? Because within every route, every scheme of a route, there has to be an outlet. There's got to be that guy. Like you watch the elite of the elite quarterbacks. They'll go 1, 2, 3. Oh, let me give it here. You know, they know right now where they are. So the question sometimes to me is, does Jalen really understand and know this offense in a way where I talked about it in the first half hour? When you're a quarterback and you're playing at the highest level, Marcus, at the elite level, you know, when that route develops, whether it's a 5-man, a 4-man, or a 3-man route, or even a 2-man route, the quarterback has to be able to close his eyes and be able to say, I know where every guy is on the field to the yard, okay? And if Jalen doesn't understand that, it's so hard to play quarterback, in my opinion.
Well, when I was a younger reporter, so my first job, part of my deal was I covered the Bills part-time. So I had Jim Kelly for 4 Super Bowls. So one of the great things about Jim Kelly, who you played against, was he was really fast to process and he had a quick release, you know? So, you know, that was the sort of the beginning, like Thurman Thomas and going to running backs who could kind of line up with receivers, which probably reached his pinnacle with Marshall Faulk, who I thought was maybe the best all-around football player I ever saw. That said, that Marshall Faulk era included Donovan McNabb. And the thing that I used to criticize Andy Reid for saying this, and Rod Dowhower or whoever, but they kept harping on, okay, well, Donovan he hit 6 different receivers in this game. And most of them more than once, or he went to 6 or 7 different guys. That was them trying to explain to me and everybody else that Donovan was processing the offense quickly. And while his accuracy wasn't always perfect, and you know, when Donovan hit the NFL, he was coming from an option offense, a quarterback option offense in Syracuse that was him running or throwing deep to, you know, Marvin Harrison or Rob Moore or whoever. But when they said that about Donovan, they were telling us Donovan is doing the right thing. He might not be doing it perfectly, but he's doing it to the best of his ability. So we know that he's progressing and we know that he's developing.
Well, when I watch Jalen play, the processing isn't as fast as it needs to be. I think that I heard that there was a little bit of frustration at practice last week to that fact by a player that I shall not reveal who it is because, you know, but you got to help your offensive linemen. You can't ask those guys to sit there and block, you know, all day long. And I'm curious, one of the things that we always talk about this offensive line being, you know, a top 3 offensive line in the National Football League. Marcus, I kind of submit to you in a lot of ways that they haven't been as elite this year as they've been in past years. I don't know if you've noticed that or whether, you know, you're of that opinion, but, you know, we talk about Jalen exiting the pocket too early. We talk about him not stepping up in the pocket. I see a lot of times where the push is coming right up the middle, not so much with the tackles, especially when Mailata and Lane are at full strength, but up the middle, there's been a lot of push in the last couple of games, and a lot of it comes from stunts and them not being able to pick up those stunts up front, and them collapsing the pocket, which forces Jalen out of the pocket.
Well, I definitely saw that through the first 5 games especially. So I did a little research on Cam Jurgens. And I don't know if you remember, the first 2 or 3 years, Jason Kelce had a lot of issues playing center. He wasn't sure what to do and when to do it. He wasn't sure what he was looking at. And the stunts really caused him a lot of problems. After his 3rd or 4th season, I think it was his 2nd season, maybe with Jeff Stoutland, it really clicked in for him. I remember Stoutland got really mad at me one time. And I asked him, I was like, what's going on with Jason? He's clearly not having a very good season. I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking at because he's played center. I'm not sure what you're asking him to do.
Right.
If he was a tackle, it'd be easier. But, the guys at Pro Football Focus, who at that point weren't like football players, they were just kind of like guys who liked football. They don't really know what they're looking at. Can you tell me, Jeff, what's going on with? Well, nothing. He's playing great. Yada yada yada. An hour later, we got the locker room, and Jason's like, I don't know, man. I'm playing horrible. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not playing fast. Yada yada yada. So that said, I think we might be looking at a natural learning curve for Cam Jurgens, who I don't know how good he's going to be, but Jason had a learning curve. And I think he's being targeted, Cam. I think he's being targeted with stunts. I think he's seeing linebackers come at him. I think he's seeing defensive back come up the middle sometimes. And, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've seen Saquon sort of linger in the backfield a little bit longer than I expected him to a few times to maybe provide that safety blanket. But I will say in this past game, Cam had probably his best game. So I think we might be seeing him on the other side of that learning curve. Or maybe it's just because they're so familiar with the Giants, they were able to prepare him better for what he was going to face.
Just move over to the right guard and give me your assessment of Mekhi Becton, because I know that, oh, geez, you just put your head down and shook it at the same time. Because he's a massive guy. When Mailata went down, there was some chatter that they should move him out there. I was like, hell no. His career almost was extinguished because he can't play on the outside. He doesn't have the feet for it, but he has the size and the mass. But there are times where you've got, a defensive, a rush specialist in passing situations lined up against Mekhi Becton. I know he's injured. I don't know what his status is, for this week coming up, but he struggled in the passing game as well.
Well, there was a lot of talk in training camp about this being Tyler Steen's job to lose, because they drafted Tyler Steen. They like Tyler Steen. But Mekhi Becton, I'm kind of an offensive line nerd, so I'll follow the Lane Johnson offensive line. This was the year, I think the first 3 picks I think were all offensive linemen, and he turned out to be the best one. So since then, I've been kind of like I kind of pay attention to that. I don't know why, but Mekhi Becton has always been a peaks and valleys guy. Sometimes in the same game, sometimes 2 or 3 games in a row he plays good. Sometimes 2 or 3 games in a row he should lose his job. Sometimes it's at this point in his career, it's almost snap to snap. You've seen it. He can be dominant. He can win, especially next to Lane, because he knows he doesn't have to help. And sometimes he just gets beat. It's almost like he takes a play off. And I'm not saying he doesn't have heart. I just don't think that he plays with the kind of focus that football players need to play with every snap, especially offensive linemen. Like if you're playing defense, if you're playing linebacker, you can kind of glide. You know what I'm saying? There are going to be plays you're not involved in. You can recognize them. Okay, this is going to go here. If this guy does his job, I'm not going to be involved in this play. Same thing at cornerback, sometimes even at safety. There is no play an offensive lineman can take it down off. And defensive linemen rotate. So really the only guys on the team who can't take a play off are the quarterback and the offensive lineman. And that's what happens from my perspective with Mekhi, and that's what I've been told happens. And it's manifested itself. However, he's a more talented athlete and a stronger guy than Tyler Steen. So he's the better option when he's healthy. But I think sometimes what we do, what I do certainly, is I expect perfection. I expect all the guys to be really good. There's a reason Mekhi Becton was available. There's a reason Tyler Steen, nobody wanted to trade for Tyler Steen. Tyler Steen's a talented guy, a good backup. You can get a good draft pick for him. There's lots of offensive line injuries right now. Nobody's coming after him. So they are what they are. So if Mekhi Becton is the worst player on your team, and you can argue that he is, but it's a really, really good team, the worst starter on your team, that's a pretty good team you got. If your worst guy is a legitimate 10, 12 game starter in the NFL, it's a pretty good team.
I kind of look at it like, there are dogs, full grown, full length fanged dogs, and then there's puppies and poodles, and you're either a dog or you're not. You can't, I don't care how much gunpowder and how much you do to a dog to make him a dog. If he's a poodle or he's a chihuahua, it is what it is. Every once in a while you stick your hand out there, he'll bite you, but he's not going to break any skin. I'll go ahead.
People don't realize about football players, okay? It's the only sport you have to love to play.
Mm-hmm.
You can play hockey because hockey's fun. If you can skate, get up and down the ice, do some skill stuff, that hockey's fun. Basketball is incredibly fun. Baseball's fun and chill. But you got to love football. So like Lane Johnson loves football. Jason Kelsey loves football. You love football. N'Kobe Dean loves football. Jordan Davis likes football. Jalen Carter kind of likes football. It's massively talented, but they don't love football. You know who loves football? Darius Slay. Loves to play football. Got his flaws, but he loves Brian Dawkins, loves to play football. Mekhi Becton, like you said, and those guys are dogs. They may not be good. Like Reed Blankenship is a dog. Not the most talented guy, but 100% committed every play. I think CJ is a dog. I think he wants to play hard every play. And I said all that to say they love it. They love being on the field. They love contact. They love the functionality of it. They love the cohesion. They love the camaraderie, the teamwork. It's a hard thing to love. And like you said, the dogs love it and the poodles don't.
Listen, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. It's kind of water under the bridge, if you will. And the only reason I'm asking is because I know you had some opinions about it last week, and I didn't get a chance to, chat with you about it. Your thoughts on Nick Sirianni and the whole dust up from last week, and then the conversation that goes on around a decisive win against the New York Giants, and then the media with this, they played for the coach. They stepped up for the coach. Okay. Mm-hmm. And before I let you go and dive into that, I just want to say, this is my opinion. Okay. I was talking to my wife about it, just the other day. Players don't play for coaches. I don't care what anybody says. They're not going to go out there and play any harder for the coach than they would normally play. This is just my opinion. Because when I played, yes, I loved Buddy. I loved him like a dad figure. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't play for Buddy. I played for those 10 guys that were next to me that I was accountable to every single play. Because you know what? We were the ones that sat in the meetings and we watched the film and we could see who the dogs were and who the dogs weren't really quickly. So I was accountable to those guys. I was accountable to the other 37 guys on the other side of the ball and on special teams. And then I was accountable to myself.
Right.
Because there was a certain level of play that I had to bring to the field, and I had goals and aspirations and things that I wanted to accomplish. Now, if I played for them and I played for myself, then the beneficiary was the team, the organization, and the head coach. But it never entered into my mind, Buddy's going to lose his job if we don't win, so we better go out here and we better play for coach.
Listen, man, this is my hierarchy, okay? my personal hierarchy, athletes in general, whether they're dogs or not, every player plays for himself so he can make the most money, whether that means winning or not. Usually winners make more money, and you got to play great to win. But your job in a what's an average football player's career? 3.5, 4 years. Make as much money as you can. Prepare yourself for the rest of your life. So number one, you got to play great to make money. Number two, if you don't play well as a team, nobody makes money. So everybody has to contribute in football. Now, basketball is different. Baseball is different. But you have to be a great teammate in order to prove that you're worth the money you make, because you're professional athletes. You're not athletes. You're a professional athlete. So, excuse me. So you are accountable to yourself and your teammates, because if you want to eat, everybody got to eat, right? So I have never believed that players play, certainly not for their coaches and franchises, because their coaches and franchises will betray them as soon as they're not useful. Your teammates don't cut you. Your teammates might compete for time with you, but these guys are going to fire you if you don't do a good job. Right. Number one, you don't play for fans, because the fans in Phoenix are just the same as the fans in Philly. They'll turn, they're fickle. They love you if you're great. They don't love you if you're not. No matter how hard you play, if you lose, you're not going to have so you play for yourself and your teammates, and you play as much to succeed financially as you do to win games. And I think sometimes the two go hand in hand, but not always, but more so in football than any other sport. Now, all that said, I don't believe the players played for Nick on Sunday. I think they played for each other on Sunday, knowing that they have something special. Like the fourth quarter against the Browns, I saw a cohesive football team on both sides of the ball for the first time all year. And that's what I wrote. I didn't write Nick coming out of that game, because Nick is a sideshow. Okay, we'll get back to that in a second. Nick is a sideshow. What matters is the team getting better? So after the bye week, after 3 quarters, this team looked pretty good in the fourth quarter against the Browns, who have the best football player on the planet in Myles Garrett. Right? Garrett. So, and he made the best play. He jumped over everybody and blocked a field goal. So they did a good job, and they carried that over through the Giants. I think they felt something, number one. I also think they played for Saquon. I think when respected players, especially stars who are humble and generous, like Saquon, and to a degree, A.J. Brown, when they play, I think they love to feature them and not give them revenge, but sort of reward them for being good teammates, for being professional, and helping them. I mean, AJ's a pretty good teammate. AJ helps Devontae Smith. AJ helps Jalen Hurts. He helps people. He's kind of a diva, but he's a receiver. So if he wasn't a diva, he probably would be AJ Brown. But when AJ plays Tennessee or Saquon plays at the Giants, they want to help these guys have the best day possible because it's more important to them. So no, they didn't play for Nick. And as far as Nick goes, so I had written 2 stories about Nick being inappropriate with fans, both off the game in Kansas City, where he taunted fans in the tunnel on camera on purpose. So one of them, I talked to a bunch of former NFL people who love to talk. It's the easiest sport to talk to former players and former executives because they're very invested in the game. They think they helped build something, and they did. And they hate what Nick did because it was disrespectful to Andy Reid. It was disrespectful to the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Chiefs have their issues, and Reid ain't perfect, but they are respected organizations and people. So I wrote that. One guy called it a clown show. This was like 2 or 3 losses into the slide. And they believed that the clown show was precipitated by Nick's dereliction of duty as a leader, being a clown in front of these guys. So when he did what he did in Philadelphia to the Philadelphia fans, independent of him bringing his kids into the interview room, which I think is always inappropriate, but I thought it was inappropriate when NBA players started doing it years ago as well. When he did it to Philadelphia fans, I was amused because all of a sudden the monster you created, the guy you were celebrating for doing it in Indianapolis and Kansas City, was doing it to you. And now it's not acceptable. This is who Nick Sirianni is. You created this monster, and now the monster turned on you.
Wow. I'm gonna leave that one there because that's a lightning rod that can go on and on and on. Vic Fangio. Aggressive week 1, passive week 2. Aggressive week 2, week 3, passive week 4. The last 2 weeks he's been very aggressive. And there are some people out there that want me to believe this narrative that the front four is just rushing better. No, he's blitzing more. And he's got his cornerbacks up, and they're playing much more aggressively, challenging people at the line of scrimmage. Is that sustainable?
Well,
Is that sustainable, or is it a remnant of the fact that you played Deshaun Watson and that anemic offense and Daniel Jones and this inept offense that he said, okay, we're going to attack them?
I think it's both. I think he's much more emboldened because of the quarterbacks that he's facing. Again, one of the things Deshaun hasn't done well since he's come back is process quickly. And Daniel Jones never has. He's a 1-2 go guy, just like Carson, just like Jalen sometimes, right? So, but the big difference for me has been the inclusion of Cooper DeJean. So against Cleveland, he let Cooper blitz a lot. I think maybe 3 or 4 times. He was in the position to blitz or blitzed. And that gets on tape. And whether or not he blitzes now, especially from that nickel corner spot, he's a threat, and the quarterback's looking at him. So that opens up blitz lanes for other and stunts and all that other stuff. So, I think the aggressiveness of Vic Fangio with Cooper DeJean in, who they drafted in part because they knew, like Brian Dawkins, it's like some guys can get to the quarterback, some guys can't. Some defensive backs and linebackers have that knack to avoid the block, to improvise, and some guys just run right into the block. So you can't blitz with guys. Like, it's crazy. It's like a magnet, right? Like, what are you doing? Why would you run at the guy whose task it is to block you? So I think Cooper is special that way. I think he's better at that maybe than playing safety or covering in space at this point. But he's got another tool in his toolbox. Everybody's playing faster because they're more accustomed to it. And I'm not saying this is by design. It might be by coincidence. But what I'm seeing is guys knowing where they're supposed to be, missing fewer tackles, being, let's be honest. Nakobe Dean hadn't played much football. Now he's played a lot of grown man football. And he's probably put on 15 pounds since he first set foot on the field, and he's healthy. So he's better at linebacker than he used to be. So I think a lot of these things are coming together to make it look like, Vic Fangio is a genius again. When the reality is they've got some pretty talented players. And I think that he's just more comfortable using them the way that they should be used. And he took Bryce Huff off the field. Bryce Huff was he was a hindrance doing what they asked him to do. He's a benefit when he's asked to rush the passer or occasionally drop into coverage or whatever, but he can't stop the run. He's a target stopping the run. He doesn't have the technique to stop the run. I don't think he has the ass to stop the run, So you can't ask a guy to do something he can't do and has never done this late into his career.
Marcus, man, I said the same exact thing because I heard what Vic Fangio said during training camp. He was asked about the progression of Bryce Huff.
But Josh Huff exists. We remember Josh Huff.
Yeah, I remember Josh.
Down on the bridge.
Yeah. He kept saying he was being asked during training camp and preseason, how's Bryce coming along? Because they had to replace, those 27.5 sacks over the last 2 years in Hassan, along with the amount of usage and, and playing time and constantly Vic would say, he's learning the position, he's understanding, and nobody really picked it up. Marcus, I talk about it all the time. I'm like, they spend $53 million on a freaking project. They paid $53 million for a guy that all he can do is rush the passer, and they thought that they were going to convert him to a rush in a guy big enough to actually play there. Now, had his best game last week, but to your point, he is, like he was with the Jets, a situational pass rusher. Nolan Smith, I think, can sense that now he's going to be the main guy, and all of a sudden he's turned it up, a lot more. And obviously Josh Sweat, he's got to continue to play well because they just don't have a plethora of talent in that position. But it's like all of a sudden, last 2 weeks they've produced 12 sacks against two really bad teams. But the question is, can they keep that level of play up? It's because it's going to be critical out there for those guys to continue to get home, because the two guys in the middle, you got Jalen Carter, who can be disruptive, but he plays one good game and then he disappears. He plays one good game, then he disappears. And by the number of plays that Jordan Davis was actually given, only 12 in last week's game, Ojomo, Williams, and Booker have now rightly, from a meritocracy standpoint, assumed more playing time there. The front was the concern for me. It continues to be the concern because until they begin to put together and stack, not only wins, but back to back ways of playing at the highest level, it's going to be problematic.
Well, let's be honest, all right? So Daniel Jones, while he's mobile, doesn't exactly have the best pocket presence. The Giants were without their starting left tackle, and I'd say at least half of those sacks were coverage sacks. Which is great. You still got to get home. You still got to fight. You can't give up. You get blocked once, you get blocked twice, 3 times a lady, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. But 12 or 13 sacks in the last 2 games is not indicative. These are not like Aiden Hutchinson sacks. These are scheme sacks. These are team sacks, and that's great. That's wonderful. But this is not a dominant pass rush at this point. That said, they haven't given up a touchdown in 2 games. I don't care if you're playing against Gardner Minshew or Tommy DeVito or whoever. If you can keep 2 professional football teams out of the end zone for 8 consecutive quarters coming off a bye, that's a telling stat. That to me indicates that you're making enough plays. Sometimes they're not dynamic, but it's not turnovers or sacks. You're making enough plays in the course of the possession to limit their scoring, and that's what it's all about. I mean, the defense is averaging 6 points per game surrendered in the 2 games since the bye. I don't care who you're playing. That's pretty good. And one of those games on the road.
All right, so we're going to go over a couple of minutes because there's a couple of more things I want to tap into you about. We talked about Cooper DeJean. Love what he brings to the table. Love what Quinyon Mitchell is doing, is getting better week in and week out. I just saw a quote come pop up on Twitter right before I started the show, and Vic Fangio is not too happy with his slot corner, returning punts, and I was telling my wife a story about it after I saw it, today. I can remember, I made the team as a special teams player. And then when I became the starter, they never took me off all the special teams. I played all the special teams. The only special team that I didn't play on was the field goal team and the extra point team. But I was on everything else. And I can remember being a starter, and I was running down in coverage and got blindsided one time. And, Otho had to come get me off the field. And Buddy comes down there. He is just cussing and going off. I told you some of the bitches to get him off he's a starter now. Get him off that get him off the special teams, because you're a starter now and you're counted on. And I can understand Vic Fangio saying, I don't want my slot corner that's helped me turn this defense around over the last 2 weeks, catching punts and getting beat up. Get him off, go out and find somebody to come in here and fair catch, punts.
Or just let him drop.
We'll take the ball. We'll take the ball where it is.
Right.
And then Michael Clay steps to the podium, Marcus, and says, well, I think he's managing it just fine.
Well, I got to tell you. So Cooper was involved in one of the 3rd down stops. And I remember he was in the backfield. I noticed him in the play. And this was kind of late in the game, so my head was kind of down. I was writing, and I was kind of busy. And I looked up, and he was going back to catch the punt. And I was like, I could not believe he was still doing that. Like, I figured, okay, if it's like a really crucial point, since he's the number one guy, he's the guy that you're most comfortable with, fine, whatever. Make him fair catch it, whatever, just be careful. He caught the punt and ran it back 15 yards in a kind of relatively meaningless part of the game, which is one of the things that if you are a veteran head coach, right, you never let that happen. That's one of the, CEO things that you should be attentive to, because if Marcus Hayes sees it and is startled by it, that's got to be something on the front of your brain, on the front of your plate. I mean, there have to be 6 other guys who at some point in their lives returned punts in college, if not the pros. And like you said, even if it's just being fair caught, if your defense is this dynamic and he's a starter on your defense and you don't really have a lot of depth at that position, because you don't want Isaiah Rodgers out there anymore. You don't want Keely Ringo out there. You drafted Cooper DeJean and he can do the job. To me, it's an indication that you still have a first-time head coach who isn't capable or cognizant of all the responsibilities of a head coach. There are lots of things that slip through the cracks with this guy, and that's not necessarily an indictment of him. There's a learning curve, and I know he's been there 4 years, but there's a learning curve. You go from wide receivers coach to offensive coordinator. You've never been involved in special teams. You've never been involved on the defensive side. And the guys you have coordinating for you to this point, you've had to oversee them on the offensive side. Shane Steichen and who's the guy last year?
Brian Johnson. These are guys you have to shepherd through that. Well, now you've got Kellen Moore, and but you have to know the job to do the job. So that's a Nick Sirianni issue. And I would be interested to see how it shakes out tomorrow when Nick is asked about it, because like you said, it's kind of like when this is a defensive coordinator for the Super Bowl team. Jim Schwartz. When Jim Schwartz was here, he was like the assistant head coach. He was the associate head coach. Nick ain't going to no defensive meetings and saying anything. Neither did Doug. That's why they got Vic. That's why they got Jim. So right. This guy could be the CEO and run the offense and develop the quarterback. But Nick, this is an indication of something that slipped through the cracks with Nick. And there's lots of other stuff, but this one's pretty blatant. So last question. We got the Cincinnati Bengals coming up. Joe Burrow has played pretty damn good this season, but the record isn't reflective of it. They're 3-4. The defense isn't that good. Their offensive line isn't that good, but man, they got 2 really good wide receivers, and this will be probably the toughest duo that they've faced since Tampa Bay, Evans and Godwin.
Both of whom got hurt last night. Did you see that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're probably going to be both out for a significant amount of time, if not for the rest of the season. At least Godwin, with the dislocated ankle. Right. But and Joe Burrow can play quarterback. He's not going to hold on to the ball. He's going to get rid of the ball. He's going to go. He processes quickly, like you talked about earlier. What's the prospects, for the Eagles winning this game? I kind of feel like this is a game that they should win. It's the next step, kind of in this launching pad for where they need to go and where they need to trend. But, they're not going to roll into Cincinnati and Cincinnati just roll over and give them this game. They're going to have to go in there and take it. So from both perspectives on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball, what do you feel they've got to get done in order to come home with back-to-back road wins?
The thing they've done best offensively the last 2 weeks is they've diminished the responsibility of Jalen. So they're not asking him to do as much. They're not asking him to do – they've sort of simplified things, and it's made him flourish. He hasn't turned the ball over. He's making better decisions. He went. I mean, he's getting grief on Twitter for like going down, taking a sack untouched the other day. He can do that twice a game, as far as I'm concerned. I think he takes too much punishment as it is, and you'll find that he makes his worst decisions when he's on the run, especially when he goes up the middle. He loves going right, up the middle and left, not so much. So, number one, stick with that game plan and feed Saquon. Make them stop Saquon Barkley. The way that teams are making the way that Ravens are making teams stop Derrick Henry. They're the best player on the team. I used to think A.J. Brown was the best player on the team. Now I think Saquon's the best player on the team. So give the ball to the best player on the team. That's offensively. Defensively, I think Vic's going to be very, very aggressive, and I think you're going to see a lot more tight coverage. I think he thinks that Joe will throw the ball quickly into pressure, and because Joe doesn't want to deal with this defense that is effectively getting to the quarterback. And this is a worse offensive line than they faced last week. Not the week before. Cleveland's offensive line was poor too. But this offensive line in Cincinnati is vulnerable. So I think you're going to see, Nolan Smith, Jalen Carter, Josh Sweat, who's got 3 sacks in 3 games. I think you're going to see them eat more. And I see a turnover or two coming from that, whether it's a strip sack or a pick on a quick slant. I think they're going to be baiting Joe Burrow. I think they're going to be making him make decisions before he wants to make them, even when he doesn't have to. And you've seen that with Joe when Joe was bad. He's not very bad. He's not bad very often. And I think he's the number 2 or number 3 rated passer in the league, which was astonishing to me. I was looking up the passer rating of Jared Goff, who's been, MVP caliber this year. And I think Joe Burrow was right behind him. I was like, how is Joe Burrow there at 3 and 4? That said, I mean, I thought the Bengals were going to go to the Super Bowl this year. I picked them to win the AFC. I had this as a drop dead loss. I thought the Eagles would be 4-3 coming out of this week. I got all the games wrong, but they probably should be 5-2 coming out of this week, considering what Cincinnati has become.
All righty, folks. Give my man Marcus a follow at Inkstain Wretch over on X. Tremendous longtime writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Nobody does it better. My man, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. All right, folks. That's a wrap. We went about 12 minutes over. No biggie. We're on YouTube. We ain't on TV tonight. Anyhow, looking forward to what these birds, fly to Cincinnati and actually get done. Like I said, I think this is a game that they should win. The next 2 games, I believe, are games that they should win. And, the birds will be sitting pretty by the time we go down to Dallas and have to face those Cowgirls down there. Big, huge NFC East matchup. But at the end of the day, 1 game at a time. First game, these Bengals. I'm going to sign off. I'll see you guys. Well, let me tell you, pre and post on Sunday, you guys know we're right here on the channel. Myself, Mark Farzetta, and Derek Gunn. Our pre and post game show will be an hour and a half before kickoff. And as soon as the game is over, right here on the Seth Joyner channel, Seth Joyner show channel, I should say, we'll be here with an hour and a half of post game commentary. The Seth Joyner show as well, the TV show airs tomorrow night on PHL 17 at 11 and Thursday on NBC Sports Philly with 2 other re-airs on NBC Sports Philly. Like I said, if you miss them in those spots, you can always come to the channel. You can see them there. All right. Again, please subscribe, like, comment, and turn on those notifications. And please tell everybody to subscribe. Time to sign off. As usual, you guys take care of each other. Be good to each other. But most important, make sure you love each other. I'll see you guys right here next week. Same place, same time. Peace.
Most people don't know how to get the care they need. The experts at Stay at Home Care can help. Before choosing a caregiver or family member for your care, you need to apply for the Home Care Program. The application process can be complicated. Stay at Home Care can help you navigate through every step. Once approved, your caregiver or family member will receive guaranteed weekly pay, a variety of medical benefits options, paid holidays, paid vacation, and overtime pay. Call Stay at Home Care, here to help every step of the way.
This is Seth Joyner, top analyst for the Birds. I've also analyzed the best auto dealerships, and I drive a Davis Honda.
Get to Davis Honda now and fall into savings. Lease a new 2024 Prologue EV for just $299 per month. See why Davis Honda continues to win outstanding awards for sales and service, including the highest award from Honda, the President's Award, 2 years in a row. Fall into savings right now at Davis Honda. Feel the Davis difference at Davis Honda in Burlington.
I'm Seth Joyner, and I drive a Davis Honda.
At Revolution X, we know that fortunes are made in times of uncertainty. Are you selling your investment real estate? Are you interested in deferring your tax with a 1031 exchange? At RevX, we're experts in 1031 exchange planning and the use of passive real estate options using DSTs. Not in the midst of an exchange and want to invest in real estate but don't know where to start? Revolution X has institutional grade real estate options for any size investor right now. Set up a consultation at RevXWealth.com. RevX, defer the tax, maximize the gain.
The Excite Center at Parks Casino, the region's hottest live entertainment venue. Check out your favorite concerts, comedy, boxing, MMA, all at the #1 casino in Pennsylvania. Don't miss Funny Man JB Smoove on Saturday, September 14th, plus Straight No Chaser on Friday, October 18th. Don't miss these two exciting headliners, only at the Excite Center inside Parks Casino. Parks Casino, this is how you win. Tickets on sale now.
Pride, passion, and persistence. These are the values that drive us all at Ron Jaworski Golf. We strive to deliver outstanding conditions as well as playability for golfers of all ages and abilities. Our championship golf courses offer a variety of challenges from a link-style walk along the river to an escape into the pines and everything in between. My team at Ron Jaworski Golf is committed to delivering memorable experiences every single day. See all we do at ronjaworskigolf.com.